Multiplying and dividing rational numbers using fraction notation. Let's take a look at multiplying fractions first. When you multiply fractions, there are 5 steps to take, and you don't always have to do all 5 steps, but there's 5 steps to work through. So let me list those out. First, change mixed fractions to improper fractions. Second, cross-reduce, which means cancel out any common factors. Third, multiply numerators. Fourth, check that your final answer is fully reduced. And lastly, state your answer as an improper fraction. So let's take a look at 3 examples of this. If you have 2/3 and you're multiplying it by -1/5, so I don't need to do step 1. There's no cross-reducing, no common factors that I can cancel in numerators with denominators. So I go on to step 3 and I multiply 2 times -1 and 3 times 15. I just double check that my final answer is fully reduced and state my answer as an improper fraction. It's not a mixed number / improper fraction, so I just leave it as this type of fraction and I'm done. Let's take a look at another one. If I have 4/7 times -3/5 times -14/23. So again, there's nothing to do with step 1, but now I do have some cross-reducing. I can cancel out, for instance, this 7 with a 7 in this, and nothing else will cancel with that 1, nothing cancels with the 5, there's no factors that cancel with 23, so I'm done step number 2, so I can go on to multiply numerators. So 4 times -3 is -12, times -2 is +24, and on the denominator 1 times 5 is 5, and 5 times 23 is 115. I can check that my final answer is reduced. It's a little tricky with these higher numbers, but it is fully reduced, and I don't need to state it as an improper fraction because I'm not dealing with mixed fractions. That's it for that one. And one last example. -2 1/3 times 4 3/4. So now I do need to change mixed fractions to improper fractions. So 6 plus 1 is 7/3, and that's a negative number, times 16 plus 3 is 19/4. There's no cross-reducing that can happen, so I go and multiply. A negative times a positive will be 3, carry the 6, 7, and 6 is -133, and 4 times 3 is 12. Ensure my final answer is reduced, which it is, and I can state my answer as an improper fraction. So I don't need to go and figure out how many times 12 goes into 133 and try to make this into a mixed fraction. Please just leave your answers as improper fractions. They're perfectly fine. Let's take a look next at dividing fractions. So with division of fractions, I'm going to cheat a little bit. There's only 3 steps. So the first step is change any mixed fractions to improper fractions. Step 2 is change any division to multiplication by the reciprocal. And you may have forgotten what a reciprocal is. The reciprocal of -3/5 is, well, what you do is you take the numerator and make it the denominator and vice versa, and so you get -5/3. It actually doesn't matter where the negative sign goes. I like to keep it with the numerator, but -3/5 is the reciprocal to -5/3 and vice versa. And then once you have it as a multiplication, then you can go and follow the steps to multiplication of fractions. And by that I mean start cross-reducing and then multiply the numerator. So you're basically picking up at step 2 from our other list. So an example or two of this, -2 1/4 divided by 3/5. So I change everything to improper fractions. 2 times 4 is 8, plus 1 is 9/4, and that was a negative number. And that's divided by 3/5. So that's -9/4 times 3/5 reciprocal is 5/3. I look to see if anything can cancel. I can cancel a 3 with a 3 here. And now I can go and multiply. -3 times +5 is -15. And 4 times 1 is 4. And this is fully reduced. And I don't have to change it to a mixed number. Just leave it as an improper fraction. 2 more examples of this, where I step up the level just a little bit. Negative 4 and 1/3 divided by 2/3 minus 4/5. So we actually have some bedmaths to do here. So I have to do inside those brackets first. So I get negative 4 and 1/3 divided by, I need to come up with the common denominator to add and subtract fractions. So this one times by 5 and this one times by 3. And that's negative 4 and 1/3 gets divided by 10, take away 12. The negatives win by 2. And now to do division, I need to not be working with improper fractions. And I could have done that step much earlier. This becomes negative 13 over 3. And then I might as well skip a step here instead of writing that out and then writing it out again as a times. I'm just going to times by the reciprocal. And there's no canceling. Oh, yes, there is. 3 can cancel with negative 15. That's nice. It's always great when it can cancel out. Negative 13 and negative 5 make a positive, and that will be 65. And 1 times 2 is 2. And that doesn't reduce any further, so just leave it like that. And one last example, and again, a little bit of a tricky one. 5½ minus 3 and 1/3 divided by negative 2 and then times 3/4. Again, got to remember bedmaths. To add and subtract these, I know you can do it with doing it with improper fractions. I really don't think it's the best method. So let me just separate out these other questions. So I think what you should do is change this to 11 over 2 and 10 over 3. And just write everything else down. We want every step to be equal to the step before. This is now going to become 6 times by 3 times by 2. And again, write everything else out. And then 33 take away 20 is 13. 6 is going to get divided by negative 2 and times 3/4. And division now needs to become multiplication. So this is 13 over 6 times, and the reciprocal of negative 2, well, you think about this as negative 2 over 1. The reciprocal of that is negative 1 over 2 and 3/4. And now I look for things that can cancel. So, this 3 and the 6, and that is all. So 13 times negative 1 is negative 13 times 1 is still negative 13. And on the bottom, 2 times 2, which is 4, times 4, which is 16. And I am done.